What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Danny and Bush coming at you today with another episode of Dynasty Decisions. This is episode 37. You guys know the drill by this point. These episodes, we talk about all of your Dynasty questions, from trades to your team outlook to rebuilding, contending. What should I do with my rookie picks? All that stuff is included in today's video. This is always our weekly, price check on certain players in the trade market, as well as some of you guys have talked about. So if you guys want to be on episodes of Dynasty Decisions going forward, you can become a patron. Link is in the description for that. Patreon.com/fantasy stock exchange. Those guys get our first priority for Dynasty Decisions. And if you want to just submit us questions anyway, and we fit in as many non-patron questions as possible, Twitter and Discord links are in the description for that as well. And another quick announcement before I introduce Danny here. We are now available on podcast feeds as well. So if you guys prefer to listen to us via podcast, of course, we do for Dynasty Decisions specifically. We have a lot of screen prompts, so we still encourage you to listen on YouTube. But if you want to listen to future episodes via podcast, we are available over there. Link is in the description for that. Just search Fantasy Stock Exchange on Google, Apple, Spotify, all that stuff. We will be available for you there. So quick announcement, we will be up to date with podcast uploads as well, if you guys were curious if we are on podcast feeds.
For sure. Again, that's something we haven't been as consistent as we wanted to be at. And I mean, for you guys, for sake, it's easy for us to upload. It's something that you guys enjoy, especially if you're, on a few-hour drive and you want to listen to a few episodes. I mean, that's very, very practical for you guys. So why wouldn't we make that a more consistent part of our planning? So yeah, podcast for sure.
Yep. So before we get into it, you guys know the drill. Got to hit the intro. All right, so we start off with the patron questions. Derek's team. We actually went over his team 2 weeks ago or last week, so we're not going to cover his team too in depth, but what he did send us is some more trades recently. So the first trade, as you guys can see on the screen there, Derek Carr, A.J. Brown, and David Montgomery is what he received in exchange for Travis Etienne, Jerry Jeudy, and the 2022 205. This is a one-quarterback league, so Derek Carr, not quite as valuable as he would be in a Superflex league. Otherwise, this would be a woodshed type of deal. But what are our thoughts overall, and how do you kind of break this one down?
Yeah, so when I initially saw it, I was like thinking, oh yeah, this is super flex. You bought low on a middling quarterback 2 type, I would say, in Derek Carr. I mean, looking at this deal, this is a clear contender versus accumulating asset, productive struggle type of team, right? ETN, Jeudy, 205. If you're in a productive struggle, those young pieces might be better for you long term. But I mean, overall, getting AJ Brown, Dave Montgomery, AJ Brown being a top 5 wide receiver in Dynasty, David Montgomery obviously being, an RB2 type in Dynasty. So
not a massive difference to me between ETN versus Montgomery. There is a difference for sure. The age is on the side of ETN. Receiving skill set, still the untapped potential of ETN is on the side of him. But Dave Montgomery's been an RB1 in the past. He's not old. He's 24, 25 years old. And that 205 obviously kind of helps offset that on the ETN side, obviously. But I really like this move for a contending type of team.
For sure.
AJ Brown is a pretty sizable upgrade to Jerry Jeudy, in my opinion, like a very sizable upgrade. And then David Montgomery and ETN, I think Derek Carr is enough as a QB2 in a one quarterback league to kind of help me offset the difference between Montgomery and ETN.
For sure. And I mean, just looking at the team, obviously Carr is a very solid quarterback to have behind Joe Burrow, obviously, who's going to be number 1. You're getting David Montgomery. He's going to lock and load as your RB3, gives you at least a contending type of running back core between him, Mixon, and Jacobs. AJ Brown, you needed that number 1 alpha type of wide receiver if you wanted to contend. And AJ Brown, when he's healthy, can surely provide that. Now it takes you from a depth, plentiful type of wide receiver core to, I got my top dog and I got a bunch of
which is what we said about his wide receiver core the first time we talked about his team, is that he didn't have an alpha dog. He didn't have a guy that was going to be one of those studs for him. So it's good that he added a guy like AJ Brown. You also ship off some risk with ETN and the injury concerns with him as well. So the second trade that he has here is Courtland Sutton for the 203 and the 207. We're not huge on Courtland Sutton, but if you can get him for this price, I really, really like that deal.
I mean, easily. I mean, you figure if he's healthy with Russell Wilson throwing him the football, I mean, realistically, 120, 130 type of targets is in his range of outcomes. And if you're having that level of quarterback play with that level of projected volume, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if you're looking at a top 15 to 20 type of wide receiver this year. getting that for the 203, the 207, a
Yeah, what's that?
contending
David
team.
Bell
Like,
and
yeah,
Zamir White, like
yeah,
not
all for that.
yeah, it's definitely not backbreaking to give up pieces like that. And then this last trade, Michael Gallup for Marquez
Yeah,
Callaway, Cordero Patterson, the 210.
more than fine doing that.
Again, yeah, Cordero Patterson probably would have helped your team a little bit for a contending window, but I think Michael Gallup long term is a better, value insulated asset to go out and acquire. Marquez Callaway doesn't mean anything to me. And then the 210 in this class is realistically the difference between the 210 and like the 310 is probably not huge. So
Yep.
giving up the 210, I don't mind doing that. You offload all your second round picks that you had, but you get a lot better pieces as a result of that with Gallup and Sutton. A lot better wide receiver depth, and your team has like a very deep wide receiver core. Obviously, behind AJ Brown, you still have McLaurin and Hollywood, who I would say are and Sutton, who are solid wide receiver 2s this year. Claypool, upside wide receiver 3 type. Calvin Ridley should be a wide receiver 2-1 kind of guy once he's
After
back.
this year,
And then Michael Gallup, again, another upside wide receiver 3 type.
for sure. So overall, any other thoughts here or any other questions here?
No, but I think this is a lot better than how your team looked before. So
Absolutely.
the first assessment that we made, I think you did a good job of acquiring some value, getting yourself some more high-end pieces, especially with AJ Brown, and building out your depth as well. So great job to Derek there. He also did say that he wanted to go after Hopkins, but the guy wanted like a 2022 first plus, and he just couldn't stomach giving that up. Again, if somebody's going to overvalue their own players, which is going to happen in Dynasty, people like to overvalue the guys that they have, even if they're not worth that. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins is probably worth a 2022 first, but a very late one, like a 110, 111, 112. Not if he wants, your 10, you have the 109. If he wants your 109 and, Calvin Ridley for him or Chase Claypool for him, like that's too much to give up. So I'm glad you didn't make that move. So let's move on to the other patron team, which is James, member of the Tone Setters tier. So shout out to him. By the way, we are going to be running our Dynasty Startup Listener League, and our Tone Setters are automatically in. So if you guys want to get in the league with us, being a Tone Setter, which is our highest tier on Patreon, will guarantee that you're in that league. So our other patrons will be, thrown in a hat and drawn for the other spots. But I think we have, 6 or 7 Tone Setters that are guaranteed in that league.
Was just about to say the actual Tone Setters fill in the league right now, and then when you consider myself and Corey, I mean, come be a Tone Setter right now. Guarantee your spot in a league with either of us. Obviously, the startup will be happening post NFL draft. More clarity there. Time for you guys to go sign up on Patreon. So if you aren't already, go get her done.
Yeah. So James's team, a Tone Setter, 12 team, PPR Superflex. Just wanted to know the direction, what we think of his team overall. So you guys can see it on the screen right there. In a Superflex league, you got Lamar, Derek Carr, Matt Ryan as your top quarterbacks. You have pretty, high-end running backs, but they're, up there in age. Austin Eckler and Ezekiel Elliott with Antonio Gibson as well. Cooper Kupp, DeAndre Hopkins, Russell Gage, Michael Gallup, et cetera at wide receiver. And then one of the top Dynasty tight ends in Mark Andrews with Cole Kmet and Dawson Knox is decent depth behind those guys. Doesn't have his first round pick, it looks like this year or next. And he doesn't have his second round pick or any picks this year, and doesn't have a second round pick in 2023. So overall, looking at this team, pretty clear what the direction of this team is. He's looking to win. Would you make any moves away from how this team is kind of constructed to maybe further your longevity, or go out and get some more win now type of pieces in exchange for maybe somebody that you want off your roster?
I mean, looking at this team right now, you're clearly banking on, for the most part, your running backs hitting. I mean, if Eckler's healthy, we expect another top 5 type of season for him. If Ezekiel Elliott, or that tandem between Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard, I mean, realistically, one's going to give you low end RB2 production, one's going to give you, middle to back end RB1 production given the expected workload. So, I mean, those are clear contending pieces. Obviously, Gibson, we talked about if he hits this range of outcomes, if he hits his ceiling, we could be looking at a middle type of RB1. And then Rashad Penny is a very, very polarizing player. From a value standpoint, I'm a little nervous about Rashad Penny. But I mean, if there was going to be a type of roster construction where you take that risk, where you take that type of player, it would be on yours. Because obviously, again, if Penny hit with the team that you have, like, you need your running backs to carry, because outside of those top 2 wide receivers, I mean, Michael Gallup's dealing with an ACL. He's not going to be ready to start the year. And then after Gallup, I mean, Gage could probably have a couple decent games with Godwin out. But like, aside from that, there's a lot of ambiguity, a lot of risk outside of those top 2 receivers.
This looks like my Dynasty Listener League team. Have you noticed that? Because I have a mobile quarterback 1 in Justin Fields. I have a 30-something-year-old quarterback in Ryan Tannehill. He has Derek Carr. I have my running backs carrying the show with Alvin Kamara and Saquon Barkley and J.K. Dobbins, who's kind of like Antonio Gibson at the current point in time. And I have, Leonard Fournette and a couple other good depth pieces like what Penny kind of represents. And I have 2 studs, Deontay Johnson and Deebo Samuel, and not much else after that. and I also have Mark Andrews. So it is a lot like my team. So this, again, you're looking to win the championship. That's what you're trying to do here. You got to have those running backs to carry you. I would gauge your league's value on Ezekiel Elliott because I just don't believe in him.
If you can get a first for him, like
even as a contender, I still don't really want to have Ezekiel Elliott on my team because I don't necessarily know if his value is ever going to be as high as it is now, which is saying a lot because his value isn't that high right now, but it might be nothing come next season.
Well, this might sound crazy, but I know in some leagues you might still be able to get Leonard Fournette for Ezekiel Elliott.
I would rather have both James Conner and Leonard Fournette than Ezekiel
in a
Elliott.
heartbeat. And I'm a fucking Cowboys fan. You guys can see the jerseys behind me. I'm a Cowboys fan. But guess what? I mean, from an injury standpoint, from an age standpoint, from a usage standpoint, I mean, this is a guy that is nearing on freaking 2,000 career touches. Like, yes, he's 26 going on 27. So you might think, oh, yeah, he's a younger player. But he's like basically out touching every other running back in the league by like 300, 400 touches. Like, it's insane.
Yeah, exactly. And then you also get you remove the double condom thing of having Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. And if you move Zeke, then you still have Pollard on your roster who could be an upside piece for you if Zeke were to get injured, which, I mean, given his touch workload and his age now, is more and more likely given the fact that he's dealt with injuries the last 2 seasons as well. So overall, looking at your team, you're well set up to try and compete for the championship, but I would gauge your league dynamic on some of your contending pieces to see, because in our league where I have a similar roster, I traded Devontae Adams away, who in my situation, you probably don't want to trade away. This was Raiders trade. And in that exchange, I got 2 second-round picks in Deontay Johnson. So I still get a very, very good contending wide receiver, and I got 2 second-round picks to increase my depth and longevity going forward. So if you can make a move like that, if you can sell DeAndre Hopkins for, a younger wide receiver that'll give you similar-ish production, maybe 90% production, same goes with Ezekiel Elliott, by all means, try and make a move like that.
And the other thing I was going to say, I mean, realistically, given your RB depth, like if this is a very RB heavy type of team, which is or type of league, which is usually what you see in more casual leagues, maybe you could flip Ezekiel Elliott and get an upside pass catcher at that value. I mean,
if you can get a young receiver like Chase Claypool or something for Ezekiel Elliott, by all means make a risk like that. If you can go get Brandon Ayuk, if you add Ezekiel Elliott, maybe your 3rd rounder in 2023, and go after Ayuk or go after Marquise Brown or something like that.
Even realistically, like you might be able to get like Brandon Cooks plus for Zeke. Like if you can even do something like that. Obviously, Brandon Cooks doesn't have a crazy ceiling, but top 15 to 20 type of wide receiver this year is fully in the range of outcomes. Obviously, he's going to be cheaper than that type of production that you could pay. Maybe you can even get Brandon Cooks in a 3rd for Zeke at this point. I wouldn't be shocked if that was the current market value.
Yep. Definitely do not disagree with that. So let's move off of James' team. Hopefully he can go out and win a championship this year. Let's get into the non-patron questions. We have ShoStopper, our first one here. 10-team Superflex PPR, just wants to be pointed in the right direction as to what to do with this team. He has Lance Stafford, Mariota as his top quarterbacks, CEH, Patterson, Hunt, Dillon at running back, most notably Marquise Brown, Darnell Mooney, Brandon Ayuk, Elijah Moore, Mike Williams, Kenny Golladay, etc. at wide receiver. Dallas Goedert, Freiermuth, Ertz at tight end. And then he's got a lot of draft capital, 101 this year, 110 this year, 204, 205, 209. 210. So those early 2nd-round picks, again, more like the 201, 202 in a 10-team type of league. And then he has 2 first-round picks in 2023 and 3 second-round picks in 2023. So obviously this is not a team that is ready to compete right away because, I mean, he says, let's just point me in the right direction. I would say continue to add pieces to this roster, continue to acquire value where you can. Again, as we're going to say pretty much for any productive struggle with the 101 this year, gauge the value of that 101. If you can get an early first next year, maybe another piece on top of it, I'm okay letting Breece Hall pass me by if it means that I can acquire more value for my rebuild going forward.
Well, I saw it was either a YouTube video or a thread, but basically the potential value that you can get for that 101 right now. And I saw one mock trade that would make a very good amount of value for you and a lot of sense for you in this situation. Obviously, again, in your situation, you are a clear productive struggle. So realistically, as good and insulated of an asset as Breece Hall is, like realistically, like by the time he is going to be that contributing workhorse RB1 for your team, he's going to be 23, 24 years old, given the current status of your team. Instead, I would rather take that value, that 20.8-year-old pristine profile, expected draft capital darling that Breece Hall is in the fantasy community, and I would see if I can get a haul. Like if you can get
a haul for Hall.
Yeah, go haul for Hall. Go brand it. Go comment it in the comment section if you made it 15 minutes so far in this video. If you can get let's just say the 105, a mid to late 2023 first, and maybe a mid or an early to mid 2023 second, that might be a realistic type of move you can do for Brees Hall right now. And obviously at that 105, you can go your best player available, whether it's, like a Drake London, Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson this year. You get another 2023 draft pick, get a third 2023 first for a team that is already well suited for the future in terms of liquid appreciating type of assets. And you're getting another second. And I think realistically, like if somebody's willing to get and pay for that top 5 type of dynasty running back that Brees Hall would represent, I think you're going to find somebody that's going to be willing to give you 105, 23 first, 23 second for him.
Right. And that's kind of the like macro game theory
100%.
piece of advice. Why we're looking to sell the 101 right now is because we are in it. Peak rookie season is upon us. Like everybody is very, very excited about this rookie class. They've been watching highlight tapes of Just Bombs Productions for the last 3 months, and they're
Classic.
super excited to draft Brees Hall at 101, but they don't have the 101 and they want the 101. So you have it. You have the golden ticket for them. They haven't been watching Bijan Robinson highlights. They haven't been watching Sean Tucker highlights and Jahmyr Gibbs highlights and Bryce Young highlights and CJ Stroud highlights. So if you can get an early first plus, or like Danny said, you can get the 105 and a mid first or something like that, by all means, try and take advantage of that market. The other thing that sticks out with this team is obviously Matthew Stafford is a little out of place because he is an older quarterback in his prime. You want to get that production off of your team. You want to tank your own first as well to try and get Bijan Robinson next year, or, get a high-end running back next year. So what I would be looking to do is get draft capital for Stafford if I can, because then it keeps the production off my team. Or if you can, go and buy, see what it costs with Stafford to go get Trevor Lawrence or to go get Justin Fields or to go get somebody like that. If you want to take Matthew Stafford in the 204 to go get Trevor Lawrence, if that's something that can get it done, by all means, go and do something like that as well.
I mean, I was also going to say too, another thing that would make a lot of sense, especially with Elijah Moore on this team. Maybe somebody's willing to give you Zach Wilson in a 2023 first for Stafford. Say they're a contender.
That's going to be the price of Zach Wilson. I think people are more high on Zach Wilson than that. It might even.
I don't know though.
Every time because I tried to trade Stafford for Zach Wilson straight up, and I had to offer the guy Stafford and a second for Zach Wilson. He still didn't accept it. So
that's crazy to me because
again, it's all going to depend on your league dynamic, how the guy values Zach Wilson. If he thinks he's a bum, he's a bust. You can probably get Zach Wilson in a first for Matthew Stafford, but it all depends on his team as well. Because if he's also a rebuilding team, then he's probably not going to be more willing to give you a young quarterback like that. So that's basically how we kind of view your team here, ShoStopper. I think you're well set up for the future. Just continue to, spend your draft capital, trade away draft capital, and take advantage of the market if you can. That 110 pick is probably going to be earmarked for, best player available, most likely a wide receiver. 204, 205, again, maybe you can add another quarterback to this team if, Matt Corral or somebody like that gets decent draft capital. Those early second rounders is probably where I'm looking to add a third quarterback if I can, a young quarterback.
For sure. No, I'll just preface, maybe you wouldn't be able to get Wilson and a first, but I mean, it doesn't make sense to me how Wilson like in a second won't be like
it's pretty wild. Some people do value Wilson highly, which is a good thing.
I love Wilson, but realistically, like Stafford was coming off an MVP level season.
Right. Yeah, it's a pretty big difference at the time. So let's move on to BDavis's team here. 10-team, half PPR, 1 quarterback league. Another similar kind of build here. Winning window is 2023, the one that he has in mind. Any moves that we should make. And the one thing I'll say right away is that I do think you can actually compete this year.
Yes.
Your winning window is 2023 because you have a young team and it's probably going to peak then. But Javonte Williams and Josh Jacobs as your top 2 backs is good enough running backs to compete this year. Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, Derek Carr, Ryan Tannehill, some combination of those guys is a good enough in a 1 quarterback league to compete this year. Your wide receiver core with AJ Brown, DK Metcalf, Elijah Moore, Devontae Smith, and Cortland Sutton is more than enough to compete this year. And you obviously have Kyle Pitts and you have the 101 this year to add Brees Hall to your running back core. So I think you can compete this year, but obviously you're well set up for the future as well with all the young pieces you have. You have 3 firsts next year as well. What are your thoughts on this team overall?
I'll say one thing that really, really stands out to me right now. Obviously, again, it depends on, the Lamar, Kyler owners' reactions and their current status where they're located. But man, like if you could package 2 of those quarterbacks and go get like a superstar quarterback, I'd be willing to do that, especially considering you have so much draft capital to add depth at skill positions. But like realistically, if you went to the Kyler owner, he said, listen, like you don't have a quarterback 2, I'm willing to give you, Justin Fields and Zach Wilson for Kyler. Like that might be a realistic move that can get done.
Yeah, or you could maybe even take Justin Fields and AJ Dillon or something and go
Yeah,
get Lamar
that
Jackson
makes
or go get
sense.
Kyler. I do think that would be a move
Fields
that
in
I'd
those
be
2
looking to make,
seconds.
because you have the superstar factor pretty much at every other position on your
Yeah,
team except for quarterback. Like, as much as I like those guys, they're not superstars yet.
yeah,
And I do think you can compete this year with this team, especially once you add Breece Hall at the 101 and probably another wide receiver at 108 and 208. So, yeah, you're in a good spot. You have the stud factor. Like, I mean, looking across the board, you got Pitts, you got Javonte, you got, Metcalf, you got Brown, you got Breece Hall that is going to be on your team, assuming as well. So, you're well set up. I there's not much I would change about this situation. Just continue to see what you can do. I wouldn't even be opposed to going out and getting another stud. If
yeah.
somebody's really high on the 2023 class and they have Justin Jefferson on their roster or something like that, and you want to take one of your 2023 firsts and give them a young quarterback, and like, if you take your 2023 first, Zach Wilson and AJ Dillon, and you can pry Justin Jefferson away
I
from
don't.
somebody,
It's gonna be
like,
2 firsts at least with
yeah,
that.
it might be more than what I'm expecting. You might have to give
100%.
me both your seconds or something
Um,
like that on
like,
top of it. But
but, like,
either
if you
way, I wouldn't be opposed to going out and acquiring another stud young wide receiver on this team. As much as, like, your wide receiver core is already good, you could
yeah, like,
probably even add another stud.
I mean, like, as much as I love Devonta Smith, like, realistically, for if you wanted to go after a Jefferson type, it probably might cost you, Smith the 108 and one of those first. So Smith and 2 firsts for Jefferson. That's probably a more realistic deal. And one, realistically, given your draft capital, like, go get a fucking superstar. Like, honestly, like,
Yeah,
the
exactly.
like
You have the depth, you have the, the superstar talent, and you have the draft capital in the future to help replenish your situation too. So yeah, going out and getting another stud would be something that I would probably encourage you to do. Let's move on to the next team that we have here,
Yep.
Josh's team. I'll let you take it away with his.
For sure. So you guys can see, I mean, a quarterback, Mac Jones, Baker Mayfield, Dana Jones, main building blocks at running back, obviously with ETN for the most part, wide receiver, DK, AJ Brown, Odell, you name it, tight end and Fant, with his picks this year being the 103, the 110, the 201, the 208, and the 303 in particular. His main questions here, just like a brief overview of this team and thoughts on this deal that he actually did lower. So one quarterback, 10-man dynasty with 3 flexes. What are your thoughts on this proposed deal that he has listed here?
So he traded away DJ Moore, Dak Prescott, Kamara, Eckler, and Deontay. So, like, a lot of,
Win
stud win
now.
now type of pieces by the looks of it. He's kind of like tearing it down with this move. AJ Brown, ETN, 3 firsts. So I'm
Yeah.
guessing, 2 2023s and a 2024 by the looks of it, or
Yeah.
maybe one this year, one 2023 and one 2024 is probably how it worked. And then 3 seconds and 3 thirds. So got a lot of draft capital in exchange for those guys. As far as breaking this one down, I mean, ETN versus Kamara, add one of those seconds in. That's probably a wash on the
Probably.
ETN side.
Probably even a third, to be honest.
Eckler,
Like,
Eckler for, I mean, AJ Brown. Okay, let me try and do this. AJ Brown and a first for Eckler and DJ Moore. Is that a wash for you? Or maybe you added
I'd rather
like all
Brown.
3 of the thirds just to make it even.
I'd rather the Brown side.
Yeah, let's just add AJ Brown, a first, and the 3 thirds for that, and then Deontay Johnson, Dak Prescott for 2 firsts. Like, again,
Yeah.
again, this is a pretty good deal. I would say for both sides. This guy obviously
Give me the
got a bunch of
picks.
superstars for his contending window, so he probably won from that perspective. You got a bunch of draft capital and some young pieces. So overall, I like that move. The one thing I will say is when I'm making moves like this, I'm almost never looking to actually acquire a running back in exchange for this,
If
because you're trying to punt this, window to the future. So ETN, as much as he's young, by the time you're ready to compete, he's going to be in his 3rd, 4th NFL season. So I'm probably looking to just get draft capital
Yeah.
instead of a young running back.
The only counter I would have to that is if you can't get more draft capital, let's just say hypothetically, those are all the
That's
picks
all
the
he
guy
has.
has.
Yeah.
And if you had to choose a type of running back, an archetype of running back that you'd be willing to take on in this situation, it would be an ETN, because obviously there's a clouded variable type of stance on how people are, obviously with ETN coming back from that list, Frank, but he shows some flashes. He catches, 6, 7 passes each in the first couple games. Like, you're taking what you just paid for ETN and you're flipping him for 1.5x profit.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Even if you don't hang on to him to the length
Yeah.
of your rebuild, you could probably sell him for more come next offseason or midway through the season or something
Yeah.
like that. So, yeah, a good spot. Again, you obviously know what you're doing here based on these trades. You have a lot of draft capital to spend going forward. Just take swings at upside is my advice going forward. AJ Brown and DK Metcalf are going to lock down your wide receiver core for a long time. No rush to trade those guys. They're still young. They should be ready. Once you're ready to compete in like 2023, 2024, they should be still in their prime. So, yeah, the 103 I'm probably looking to add another stud young wide receiver, most likely 110, same thing, 201, same thing. And then come the 2023 class is probably when I'm going to look to add my running backs.
Yep, for sure. So we can move on to the next team here. That's going to be from JoshyHols, and he mentions in the Discord message. I guess this is the question that he wanted us to answer, along with the team that he provided. But he had Parker, Allen Robinson, Raheem Mostert, and Melvin Gordon to start this offseason. And he wanted to know what we do with guys like that. You know, these older, cloudy
Free
type of
agent signing
situational.
type of movements. Yeah.
Yeah. What do we do with those type of players? And he says, I'm sure a lot of people like me had one or more of these guys on their roster and lucked into some good, but never really exciting offseason news with them. He basically wants to see like, what do we do with guys like this, and who out of this group that we would think has the most success. So overall, we'll just look at the roster first. I mean, one quarterback league, having Josh Allen the quarterback one, like you can't improve that. Point blank, simple.
Yeah,
Running
get two of the
backs.
top 5 dynasty running backs and a
Yep.
very, very good RB3 and David Montgomery. You got Diggs,
Good
you got
depth.
Robinson, you got Ayuk, Claypool, et cetera, at wide receiver, and Kyle Pitts as your tight end. So you can compete with this team very clearly to
100%.
me. At 107, I'm probably looking to add another wide receiver to that group that you have there, get some more youth, another upside piece there. Especially in your case. So you're asking, what should I do with a guy like Allen Robinson? I would keep him on your
Yeah,
team. You're ready to compete. I would keep Allen Robinson. Maybe you gauge what the value is to see if somebody's willing to overpay for him, but he's a guy that fits perfectly fine for your roster. A guy like Mostert, again, another good news signing. I would say he went up in value as a result of him signing with the Dolphins
yeah,
because there's carries to be had there, there's volume to be had there. I would just keep him as a depth piece, and same kind of goes for Melvin Gordon and Devontae Parker. They increased their value slightly, nothing
yeah.
crazy, but they went up a little bit in value, and not enough that I'm willing to like sell them, but when you're a competing team like this, you probably just use it as reinforced depth for your team.
For sure. And I mean, just mentioning A-Rob real quickly, because that is like the main, like, valuable piece, if you will, out of this quartet that you mentioned. And yeah, I mean, going from, that ambiguous situation with the Bears, Justin Fields rookie year, inaccuracy, at times not a lot of volume available for Allen Robinson, albeit I don't think he was the same player last year. You're going from that type of cloudy situation to a clear, successful passing attack, which the Rams represent. I mean, that was as good of a move as you could possibly ask for as an Allen Robinson owner. Hence the give me Allen Robinson on the Rams over a 2023 first Yates tweet,
Yeah,
which
exactly.
we wouldn't
And
go that far. But
if you were a rebuilding team and Allen Robinson was like your wide receiver one and everybody else was young,
yeah,
rebuilding type of assets, and you had no running backs and no good tight end, no good quarterback, then I would say yes, sell Allen Robinson at that point. But you're in a position to win. So
yeah,
anybody that sees an uptick in value, Parker, A-Rob, Mostert, Melvin, I'm more inclined to just hold on to guys like that. But if you're a rebuilding team, then by all means, gauge the market on any of those guys. See what people are willing to give up for them now that they've signed in better positions. And I mean, you have 2 firsts next year, so you're in, well stocked up to be able to replenish your roster as Diggs and Robinson and stuff get older too.
yep, no, 100%. And he does have a couple listed trades here, so I guess this was either before or out. He doesn't clarify when this was, but he traded away Trey Lance in the 402 in a one quarterback league for A-Rob. I mean, realistically, in a one quarterback, A-Rob's probably what, give or take, an early second type of value, one quarterback league,
I think he
mid
honestly
second.
in a one quarterback league, he probably has first round value, late first round value.
Yeah. So I mean, either way, that type of turn, and obviously Trey Lance's value in a non super flex comparatively to a super
I
flex
would say
goes
he
down
probably has a little bit more value than Robinson, but
a little bit. Yeah.
given that you have Josh Allen, I don't know. He doesn't list his other quarterbacks here. Maybe you don't have another quarterback, but I mean, it's not like you need one. Like you have Josh Allen. Like Trey Lance would be the type of guy that I would want to have behind a guy like Josh Allen because he's athletic and he
Upside.
runs and he has upside. So he'd be the type of QB2 I would love to have on this roster because he's for those reasons. But trading him away to acquire another wide receiver that's going to help you win. Definitely not a move I would say is a bad thing. And then getting Keyshawn Vaughn for the 407. I mean,
Yeah, like
I'm not a
whatever.
big Keyshawn Vaughn guy, but I know he's got more value now than he did last year. And he proved
For
more
sure.
now than he did last year. And the 407, like you ain't getting anybody special, at least not a running back that had, third round draft capital that still has some kind of ceiling. Not really a lot of ceiling. Probably only in the event of injury that he has any kind of ceiling, but it's something. It's probably better than you're going to get from the 407.
I mean, like at the end of the day, if you can just, I guess, add depth to a redundant rookie pick, like as I say, redundant, watch like the next Justin Jefferson go at that 407. But
Yeah,
I
literally.
mean,
Yeah.
not only is it a
We got Romeo Dubs coming into the NFL next year and breaking the rookie record.
Amen. Big dubs. You got to eat a dub. Am I right?
Yeah, exactly. So, looks like you're in a good spot. Let's move on to John's team. We actually didn't mention this at the beginning of the video, but we are doing a double header of Dynasty Decisions this week. We got a lot of submissions from you guys, so we will have another video tomorrow. For those of you guys that submitted a question, you're like, where the hell's my question? It'll be on tomorrow's video. So, John's team, 14 team, Superflex, PPR, tight end premium roster. Lamar and Lance in a Superflex definitely will do there, but not a notable quarterback 3, which is, a tough part about playing in a 14-teamer. You got J.K. Dobbins, A.J. Dillon, Ramondre Stevenson at running back, DK Metcalf, Jalen Waddle, Jerry Jeudy, Amari Cooper, etc. at wide receiver, tight end, Dawson Knox, Albert O. And then you have a kicker as well, which is odd because I never see that in Dynasty. But he basically says, I hold the 104, the 105, the 110, and the 204 in the rookie draft, which is definitely a good position to be in. And he traded away Jimmy G, Rashad Penny for 102.
Easy.
Which is insane to me. And then you flip the one. So I'm not a big fan of the second move that you did here. I
don't like the flip at all.
Yeah, so I would have just held the 102 if I was you. So he said he flips the 102 for Dawson Knox, the 110 in the 2023 third.
No.
Listen, the 110 and the 102 is a pretty big difference in my opinion. Even in a super flex league, it's a pretty big difference for me. The 102 is at minimum going to be Malik Willis or Breece Hall. And if you don't like either of those guys, then you got to, stud wide receivers. And in a 14-team super flex, Malik Willis has got a lot of value. So I personally would not have done the fact that you somehow got the 102 for Rashad Penny and Jimmy G. I would have, ran all the way to the bank and laughed myself all the way there. So you would shedded him on the first one, but I think you might have gotten fleeced on the second one. But at the bright spot is that
you profited.
You traded Jimmy G for Penny or Jimmy G and Penny for Knox the 110 in a 2023 third, then you made out positive.
Yeah, it's just so unfortunate. Obviously, again, like at the time, Knox, not a target earner, to say the least. Very, very buoyed by touchdown production. I mean, is he still, fine, a solid 1-2 turn type of asset in terms of tight end premium value? But he's probably around there. But realistically, I mean, that 102, you're locked into either a top 5 dynasty running back or in a 14-team super flex Malik Willis, who I have ranked as a top 15 quarterback in Dynasty. So that second deal, at least overall you profited between those two deals. But yeah, that second deal is a little rough. But I think we both agree that taking the Rondale Moore hype and basically recycling it into another valuable dart throw with that second, like I would rather the second straight up over Rondale at this point.
Yeah, he's hard to gauge because I think a second round value is where I have him, but I do think you might be able to get more for Rondale Moore, pun intended. Knowing that people are, willing to invest in young athletic wide receivers like him. So if you could have gotten like a second this year, like the 203 or something like that, I probably would have preferred that, knowing that it's like 3 years from now that you can use the pick in 2024 is a little bit unfortunate, but nonetheless, I think a pretty solid move. And then this last trade I think is solid there. You trade away Joe Mixon. And you get the 105 and Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper, I don't know if you did this before or after the Deshaun Watson trade, the Amari Cooper trade, but either way, he has more value now than he did, a couple months ago. So even if you don't use him for your team, you can probably sell him off for more than what you got.
Yeah, 100%. So overall, we like all of your trades apart from that flip from 102 to the Knox side there. He also says, what do you do from here and what positions to grab, and just some advice because he came in 9th last year. So he clearly states here his draft capital being the 104, the 105, the 110, and the 204.
I'm probably going to grab Kenneth Walker with one of those first picks. 104, 105, because I do as much as I don't want to force a running back pick, you do, have a really solid wide receiver core. So it's probably fine for me if Walker gets a good landing spot, gets good draft capital. If you want to take the 104 or the 105 and spend it on Kenneth Walker, spend the other pick on potentially a quarterback. If they get very good draft capital, sell the idea maybe of a quarterback. If Kenny Pickett goes 6th overall and suddenly his consensus value is that he's the 105 in super flex leagues, then sell the shit out of that pick and move down to 107 and grab yourself a stud wide receiver or something like that. And then at 110, again, you're probably good to just grab, Jahan Dotson, Sky Moore, Chris Olave, somebody like that. Maybe Jameson Williams slides a bit due to the injury. So I think you're pretty much just going best player available. And again, You will have videos talking about our rankings and how
Yep.
we would attack rookie drafts, post draft, and all that stuff. So we will have you covered by then. And of course,
100%.
Patreon will have our rankings there as well.
Yep, no, 100%. I mean, realistically, if I were to gauge those picks, let's just say Walker falls to one of those picks. You want to get, a locked in RB2, 3 type of archetype on this team. 105, best receiver most likely available, whether it's Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Treylon Burks. One of them should fall to that pick. So you go with that. And then, I mean, you're talking about 110, 204. It's so hard to kind of project exactly who's going to be available at those picks. But given experience, given what we've seen, I mean, 110, you could be looking at, as Corey mentioned, the Jameson Williams, maybe, Olave falls, a Jahan Dotson, a Sky
Again,
Moore
maybe a quarterback gets good draft
quarterback.
capital. If Desmond Ritter goes 32 to
round
the
one.
Lions or something like that in a 14-team super flex, he's worth that 110
100%.
in that situation. And you do need a quarterback 3, which would make sense with that pick as well. And again, if you don't like the quarterbacks in this class, or if your league is overvaluing quarterbacks, make sure to try and, sell the idea of quarterbacks to people too with some of those picks, because you will get a king's ransom for them. And that 204, if Trey McBride is there, he would also be a guy that I would have in consideration as well to add to your tight end core. So let's get on to the final question of the video. It's not a team, it's just a question. I think it's an interesting topic. You guys kind of talked about it. You and Ron talked about how to handle the early picks in a startup. But basically, he's in his first startup, Superflex Dynasty startup, and he has the 103. Now, the one thing I will say before we go forward is that if you're in your first startup, trading down and in favor of accumulating picks is dangerous, because you might not know the value. And he kind of brings it up. He's like, I don't know really what the value of these picks are. If you do that, like, reach out to one of us and we'll answer you, and we'll tell you, 100%. If the picks are equivalent value, because trading down is typically something that is for experienced dynasty players that know the value and the market dynamic of their league. So I would say, if you don't know how to trade down, don't do it. Don't force it. Because you can really screw up your draft that way. So at 103, in a non-third round reversal, the 103 is a very, very valuable player because it's guaranteed to be Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, or Justin Herbert in a Superflex startup. So in my opinion, the first trade down point that I'm looking for is 104, after, like, when Jonathan Taylor and Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray are on the board, because I can typically slide back to 106, 107, 108 potentially, and get one of those guys there, and maybe accumulate a first round startup rookie pick, or pick swap in the early rounds of my startup. That's probably what I'd be looking to do. But again, if you're looking to trade down from the 103, don't go any further than 106, 107, 108 to try and secure Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, somebody like that. And if you can, pick up like a third round startup pick for your fifth round startup pick, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, again, if you want more information, Neil, obviously, me and Ron went fully in depth on understanding the relevant value, understanding the macro theory behind realistically getting yourself into a startup when you're on the clock, when you're trading, when you're preparing for that startup. Everything's kind of discussed in that video. But in terms of relative value, obviously, in my opinion, in your opinion, top 3 pick in the startup is a tier above every other pick, because the value insulation, the top end ceiling, the rushing production, the talent insulation, everything that you could possibly imagine, especially at the most valuable position in the Superflex, which is the quarterback, is all provided there between Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, and Patrick Mahomes. So realistically,
which is why third round reversal even exists to begin with. It wouldn't exist if it wasn't such an advantage.
100%. Without third round reversal, getting one of those 3 value insulated assets is just so tough to overcome from the rest of your league, which is why third round reversal exists. Because obviously, if you're getting Josh Allen like in a non-third round reversal and you're pairing him with, let's just say
CeeDee Lamb and
Jalen Waddle,
it's a pretty stacked way you're going to start your draft. So that's why it exists. And again, in a non-third round reversal, I'm pretty hesitant to trade from those picks, to be honest. You need to give me some serious value. If you want to trade your 108 for my 102 or my 103, and you want to give me your 2023 first and pick swap our 4th and 5th rounders, like, sure, I'll do that. But like, it is a pretty large difference. Like, think about it this way. If you were trading Justin Herbert away for Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, what would you want on top of it?
Yeah, well, look, 100%. And I think 108 might even be a little bit deep, because
you probably won't get those guys there. Most of the time, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray are off the board by 106, 107.
And that's why I say it, because if I'm moving off of such a loaded quarterback asset like Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, or, I mean, somehow if Josh Allen fell to 103, like, I would need at least the assurance that I can get Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson at my next pick. Even if, like, JT's the best available, Chase the best available, Jefferson's the best available, Burrow's the best available. Like I want one of those Konami code elite quarterback, one level ceiling quarterbacks, which all of those other players don't represent. The only players representing that would be the Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson area in the middle of the first round. So if you can get, Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson and a first rounder, and as you mentioned, maybe a pick swap, like I'm willing to entertain that type of value. But realistically, in some leagues, like people might be hesitant, people might be unwilling to make that move, especially as you mentioned, this is your first Superflex startup. So I'm assuming some people in that league will be hesitant to just trade, especially in the early portion of their drafts, because they don't understand relative value. So if that's the case, unless you're getting,
just take the elite asset at that point. Like it's very easy, especially if this is a 6 point per passing touchdown, or like there's any kind of bonuses for big plays or anything like that. Like you are in a very good spot if you get one of those top quarterbacks in that kind of format.
And I mean, realistically, the beauty of having an elite quarterback asset, like let's just say Herbert in this instance, we'll pin the name of Herbert at that 103. Every other position you take, even if it's a wide receiver, a running back, a tight end, for the most part, they are going to go down in terms of relative value post startup, because it's more easy to replace wide receiver production. It's more easy to replace top end running back production. It's more easy to replace, like, other than Kyle Pitts and Mark Andrews, tight end production across the board. For a fact, if somebody goes and wants to offer and trade for Justin Herbert, that if you're actually willing to sell them, it's going to be because that person's offering an overpay. Point blank simple. That is the type of asset.
And it feels excellent having a quarterback like that.
100%.
Because I have a team with Mahomes on it. I have a team with Allen on it. I have 2 teams with Herbert on it. Like it feels awesome having one of those guys on your team. And one of the teams I have Herbert on is a 6 point per passing touchdown with big play bonuses. So he is a monster, putting up like 50-point games some weeks.
Yeah. And I mean, like getting that as a 22-year-old insulated quarterback who's going to be signing a $50 million APY deal within the next 2 years. Like, yeah, it's freaking exciting having that type of asset.
Yeah, exactly. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, hit the like button. If you didn't, hit the like button. Comment down below any of your thoughts as well. We will get to them if it's any kind of dynasty decision type questions. We always appreciate those. Subscribe to the channel if this is the first video that you guys are checking out of ours. Hit the subscribe button. Go check out our Tail of the Tape series. Go check out some of the recent videos we've done with guests. Tomorrow we'll have the second part of this dynasty decisions episode where we have the rest of the teams that we were submitted this week. On Tuesday, we'll have our video of running back ideal landing spots, basically part 2 of the video we did with Trevor for the wide receivers with Angelo Fantasy on Twitter. If you guys want to check him out, we will have that for you on Tuesday. And then, we have some big guests coming in the coming days after that with Graham Barfield of Fantasy Points and Matt Harmon from Reception Perception. So stay tuned. Again, if you're not subscribed, we got some heat coming your way. So hit the subscribe button.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say you guys would have already known about that if you follow us on Twitter. You see my Twitter at DannyFootball59, Corey's Twitter at Football Stock, and obviously if you want to follow the brand Twitter, Fantasy Stock X. And appreciate all of you guys that are already following. Just thought, we don't really shout out our Twitters much, so if you want to go follow us on there, make sure you go do so.
Yep. And again, if you guys want to support us in any way, patreon.com/fantasy stock exchange, you will get access to our Dynasty Rankings Manifesto with our rookie rankings, Superflex, 1 quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, Dynasty Rankings, foundational rankings by age bucket. And you can also get access to our Dynasty Rankings Manifesto by checking out our sponsors over at Underdog Fantasy. Using promo code FSE at sign up and first deposit, you will get 100% match back on whatever you put in. Plus, you'll get our Dynasty Rankings Manifesto for free. They have a ton of contests going on right now. Superflex Big Board, rookies and sophomores, basketball stuff. If you guys are basketball fans, they have NHL stuff. If you're hockey fans, like the Canadian lads over here. With that being said, guys, peace out. Danny has something to say before I peace out.
All I was going to say, another reminder, if you are not yet a tone setter, go subscribe right now and lock yourself into a Dynasty League with myself and Corey.
Yep. Peace out. We'll talk to you soon.